My name is Ian, and I am in Montreal today at a medical conference to speak about my living with an undiagnosed rare disease called Muckle-Wells. I've lived up until 32, 33 with a variety, a host of symptoms, including a rash all over my body, uncontrollably bloodshot eyes, red eyes, arthritis, migraine headaches, cold sores and fever blisters, and there's been a couple of other things that have come up in my adult life. I've been to see rheumatologists, dermatologists, ophthalmologists, ear, nose, and throat doctors. You name it, if it's related to this disease, I've seen someone, or at least one or two or three different specialists in that area. No one ever knew. The big symptom has always been that I have a rash all over my body. The journey to diagnosis has been an extremely long one. It's a very social disease that I've lived with, but it's never really been a disease to me. It's always been just a bunch of different things that are wrong with me. One of the interesting parts of having Muckle-Wells has been that not everything happens at the same time, and not everything is correlated. You get up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and you say, am I putting in eye drops today? Am I wearing pants and long sleeves? In 2012, I had a daughter, and when she was born, she had some spots on her body. The first night we were in the hospital, I remember panicking, and my wife, who had just had a baby, had to calm me. I was a new father, but I was more concerned with the social aspects of what my daughter would have to suffer through if she had what I had. And it was that moment in 2012 when I was home with my daughter that we had our little, I'm emotional right now thinking about it, but it was one of those nights where we sat up all night talking, my wife and I, and it was the turning point. It was, this is it. It's no longer about me, it's about her, and I've got to figure out what this is. It was at that day when we decided we would do whatever it took, and so we started trying to change diets. Everything you can think of, you know, all the way to paleo and to raw and to hormone-free, antibiotic-free. We tried everything. And so I went to my GP, who wouldn't refer me without doing all the tests herself, because that's what GPs want to do. They want to figure out what the answer is so that you don't have to bounce around. But again, no answers. So that's when I started to do my own research on the side. It was what allowed me to start taking control of my health, was to not have to rely on the next specialist I go to see to have some sense of what it is. Eventually, we stumbled upon something that talked about all the other symptoms I've dealt with in my life, and that was Muckle-Wells. I'd spent the week telling anyone who would listen, this is what I found, I think this is what we've got, I have to find someone. But Muckle-Wells is so rare, so incredibly rare, that you can't just search for Muckle-Wells doctor in Toronto, for example, and get someone. You really have to dig. And I was lucky that there was a doctor in Toronto who specialized, or at least had some of his practice was in this area. And I found him because his name was on an agenda for a conference 2 years prior, and that's it. And then I emailed him at 8 o'clock at night, and he answered at 3 that same morning. And so when I woke up the next morning, there was someone on the other end who I'd sent him the pictures and the description and the story, and his response was, get a referral, get in there, I want to see you right away. And it was the first person who's ever said, yep, come on, let's have a look. I think I have an idea.
My experience with Ian started in March of 2014 when I was away at a meeting in Denmark. He had struggled for many years trying to figure out what was wrong with him, unable to be diagnosed by a whole variety of generalists, specialists, and subspecialists. CAPS is one of those very rare diseases that family doctors, pediatricians, generalists, and most specialists are never going to come across in their lifetime. This is more than just a case of hives or a case of red eyes or a case of sore joints for a few days. When a pattern emerges, I think what the primary healthcare practitioner needs to do is say, who would be the best specialist to look at this pattern? And I think what we need to do as people who are developing expertise is to set up referral centers and get that advertised out in the community. We'll be a center for rare diseases. We'll be a center for rare inflammatory diseases. And if you come across a patient, you don't need to know what the diagnosis is, but if it's suggestive of an inflammatory disease that you can't figure out, please make a referral. We'll be happy to see them and try to figure out what it is.
For me personally, since I've been diagnosed and started treatment, my life has changed drastically. I'm much more open to new things. I'm not hiding behind my clothes anymore. I don't have to wear a ball cap and sunglasses. What it's also done is it has allowed us to refocus as a family.
In the last decade, the advancements in understanding CAPS has led to the use of drugs which block interleukin-1, the protein which leads to all the signs and symptoms of inflammation. Now that there are 3 different drugs, anakinra, rilonacept, and canakinumab, all of which seem to control the symptoms of CAPS very, very well. They all have their specific strengths, and they all have their limitations.
The medicine that we take is what's called an immunosuppressant medicine, which means it does a great deal of shutting off your immune system. There's parts of your immune system that no longer are allowed to work. And that means that as a family, we've had to focus on things like health and wellness a lot more. And for our daughter, who is on this medicine at a very young age, it's very important that we focus on nutrition for her.
So Ian's taught me a very important lesson, and that is we have to listen to the patient. I always knew that, and I always tell that to my students, and I always think that to myself. I'm not sure that I always do it.
The biggest change since diagnosis and treatment is that now we have an answer. Knowing something is better than not. Even if I had an answer and no treatment, having the answer and knowing what it is means a ton, because then you have something you can work towards.